Hey there, it is Faith Talk Live. I'm Rick Probst.
And I'm Dan Ratcliffe.
Hey, what an honor and a privilege to talk to this guy. In fact, I think we've talked to Jerry before, and I'm a little surprised Jerry wanted to be with us again because of our reputation, Dan.
It precedes us, doesn't it?
But what an honor, Jerry Jenkins, of course. Who on the planet didn't read the Left Behind series with Jerry Jenkins and Tim LaHaye back in the day? Well, guess what continues his amazing writing style? The Dead Sea Conspiracy is out today, and you got to get it. It's book 2 in the Dead Sea Chronicles series. Jerry, how are you?
Doing well, Rick and Dan. Great to be with you.
Good to have you. Thanks for being on with us. I have to admit, back when the whole Left Behind series came out, my wife and I would stay up all hours of the night reading them, just couldn't put them down. You have a way of writing that just captures the imagination, and even for somebody like me who's not much of a reader, thanks for everything you do. It was phenomenal. So I can't wait to talk about this one.
Well, I appreciate that. Believe it or not, that first Left Behind book came out 27 years ago this week.
Oh, wow. Now I really feel old.
Well, see, it's funny. I didn't Google it, but I was thinking in my mind, where was I? And I remember I was not here. It worked for this company, but another company, radio company. And it was like, when was that? And I was thinking that was somewhere around early 2000s, probably, right?
Late 90s, yeah.
Late
1995, actually.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's
crazy.
amazing. How many times do people, and we do want to talk about your latest work because it's amazing as well, but how many times do people come up to you and say about the same thing that Dan says? Because everybody that I know that's read any or all of the series, they say they just couldn't put it down.
People do still say that, and amazingly, that phenomenon continues to this day. That 16-book series is still selling about 15,000 units a month to this day.
Wow.
It just still blows our minds.
That is amazing. Well, let's talk about the new book. It's called The Dead Sea Conspiracy. Now, this is the second part of the Dead Sea kind of series. Is that right?
Right. It's second of a 2-book series. There may be a third if this one really catches on. If you guys make this a bestseller,
no pressure, but awesome. Well, tell us kind of the premise of the story for those who haven't read the first one. Tell us the premise of the story and how the idea came about for you.
Yeah, and I should say one thing that you can read book 2 without reading book number 1. I mean, most people like to read number 1, and if they read 2, they might go back to number 1. But I put enough in there so that it brings you up to speed. You know what's going on, and it's pretty self-contained. But the story actually came to me from the publisher, and that doesn't often happen. I'm fortunately at a place in my career where sometimes publishers will come to me and say, could you do a novel on this subject? And usually I say no, because I have enough of my own ideas, and we novelists are kind of selfish types, and we like to, write our own stories.
Yeah.
But the publishers came to me and said, what would you think about a novel based on an archaeologist and working in the Middle East? And it kind of intrigued me, but I admitted that I was not an expert at all. I'm not a theologian or a scholar, and I'm certainly not an archaeologist. So I said, if you could find me the right consultant, I could do this. I think I'd like to try it. And they hooked me up with Dr. Craig Evans of Houston Baptist Seminary, who's a prof and an archaeologist. He's the smartest guy in the room, no matter what the room. And he's able somehow to keep those cookies on the lower shelf where I can reach them. And so I learned an awful lot from him. But my main character is Nicole Berman, who's late 30s. She has 2 earned doctorates. She wants to dig in Saudi Arabia, but she's got several things going against her. Her youth, her gender, her religion. She happens to be a Messianic Jew. So all those things you can imagine a Muslim country allowing somebody like that to dig. Mm-hmm. And she comes to the conclusion that probably the only reason they did is that if she finds something that would shed light on the discord among the major religions and these countries, that she might be an easy mark and they could quash this and not have to worry about it. So that becomes the intrigue of the contemporary story. Mm-hmm. But every other chapter, I switch back 4,000 years to the time of the birth of Abraham and his upbringing, because that's the kind of stuff she's looking for, is things from Mesopotamia 4,000 years ago. And some readers are really jarred by jumping back and forth every chapter, but others already that I've heard from the pre-readers have said they really enjoyed that. And I think it keeps their attention because it kept mine when I was writing too.
Yeah, no, that's a cool idea. I like that.
Dead Sea Conspiracy, Jerry Jenkins. This is book 2 in the series. Jerry, when you write a series, do you start off saying, "Hey, I've got everything I want to put in this series," or do you unpack it as you go? Obviously, the first book is finished. That when you go to work on a book 2, are you starting to unpack more, or do you pretty much know what you're going to do in the next book?
Well, that's a good question because about half of all novelists are what we call pantsers. We write by the seat of our pants. we write as a process of discovery. In fact, Stephen King is sort of the top, model of this. He says, put interesting people in difficult situations and write to find out what happens.
Yeah.
So I write as a process of discovery. I have an idea where I'm going to go. I have a character, and I think I know where I'm going and where it's going to end, but it always surprises me what happens along the way. I don't outline feverishly, and some people, the other half of writers who do that, they sometimes wish they were pantsers. And we pantsers, when we get about halfway through and wonder where we're going next, we wish we were outliners. We're sort of like, I remember when I had hair, people who have curly hair want it straight, and straight hair people want it curly. Well, we're that way too. But that keeps me out of trouble with the readers sometimes, because they'll say, "Why did you kill off my favorite character?" And I can say, "Hey, I write as a process of discovery. I was as shocked and disappointed as you. I didn't kill him off. I found him dead."
And that takes all the pressure off of you. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like, well, it wasn't my fault. He got killed.
Yep.
Is it
hilarious.
now? You've been writing for so long. Does that surprise you? I mean, people, when we read or we watch something on television, and just to mention your son and the Chosen.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that thing has exploded, and Dan's been telling me. I mean, it's pretty amazing. But we gravitate toward a character, and if something happens to that character, does that still surprise you that we would be so enamored or in love with a character that oh no, I can't believe it, Jerry, why'd you do that?
Yeah, well, I kind of have to live with these characters too, and so I know the feeling. And you're right. I've been writing a long time. In fact, when I started writing, I think rainbows were black and white still. But I still have to. I love to make up stories, and I found too, as I get older, the memory's not what it used to be. And so it used to be I could keep all this in my head and keep track of everybody. But even in the Left Behind series, there was a time when I wrote a book where the sun had diminished in power by a third. That was one of the curses that it's prophesied in Scripture.
Right.
And I had a bunch of people out in the desert, and I had them wearing sweaters and long pants and hats and stuff because it was cold. And as I'm writing the thing, I'm thinking, wait a minute now, that curse happened in the last book. Did that curse lift by the end of that book? I just didn't remember. I went back and noticed that, the curse had lifted and the sun was now full power again. I had to go back through this manuscript and undress all my characters.
Well, that's awkward.
Yeah, it was. But you're right too about the phenomenon of the Chosen. My son Dallas created that, and I helped him get his start in the film business back when he got out of college years ago. And ironically, this phenomenon of the Chosen has hit him in his mid 40s, which is what I was when Left Behind hit.
Yeah.
And so I've been able to counsel him a little bit on the phenomenon, but really, this is his project alone. He created it. And I feel like I'm sort of pressing my nose up against the glass and saying, can I play too? But he lets me write a novel for each season. So that's been great fun. I'm working on season 3 right now.
I mean, he definitely got his dad's storytelling ability, and just through the different medium. I mean, you're such a phenomenal writer on page, and him with a camera and film. I mean, when you first start watching, sometimes you think, okay, this is going to be a hokey Christian film, but he does it in a way that is just beautiful. And the characters, I mean, obviously it's Jesus, but he has a way of building the characters. It's just, you've got to be a proud dad. That's all I can say.
I am. I wish I could take credit for his storytelling gift, but it's really something unique, and it's been amazing. My wife and I will see him on these behind the scenes specials and things on Facebook and on TV, and we say, "Who raised that kid?" I
mean, Jerry Jenkins, always delight. The new book is out today, so get it. Not just this book, read this book, but read number 1 as well if you haven't. Dead Sea Conspiracy. This is book number 2. And you can go to jerryjenkins.com to find out more. Jerry, I remember the last time, you're so humorous, and we just love having you. And what you do is so important to the body of Christ. It really, really is. Just keep writing. And if you ever decide to write a book about washed up radio talk show hosts,
we know a couple.
Here's your samples right here.
Hey, I've written a lot of fiction, so I could do that.
All right, check out the book and more to come. Let's take a break. We'll be right back. I'm Rick Probst.
And I'm Dan Ratcliffe.
This is Faith Talk Live.